What's going on, guys? Josh here from Momentum Productions, and today we are going to be using the Jiwon Crane version 2 gimbal on a slider. If you have watched a few of my previous tutorials on the Jiwon Crane version 2, you'll know that I'm able to recreate a lot of dolly in, dolly outs, tilting shots without the use of a slider. However, if you do decide to use a slider, you will get much more stable and much more accurate shots. Only use a slider if time permits it. I always try to use a slider when I can, but on a lot of my shoots, I don't have the time to set up my slider and mount a gimbal on it, which is why using a standalone gimbal can be very beneficial at times. But if time does permit it, I strongly suggest using a slider for creating beautiful establishing shots, such as dolly and tilts, sliding and tracking, and dolly in turns. All of these moves are crucial establishing shots, and they help greater tell your story. So in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to use your Jiwon Crane version 2 on a slider like this one here. This slider is about 4 feet long. It's made by a company called Lang. The specific model is the Lang S3 slider. I'll leave a link in the description box below where you can buy one. I'll also leave a link in the description box for the Jiwon Crane version 2. This slider here is a standard slider, which means that it'll work with many different types of equipment. So that means you can use any gimbal you wish, as long as it has a tripod screw adapter on the bottom of the handle. That way you'll be able to easily mount it onto the slider's cradle. Alright, let's get to the action.
Let's start off by talking about the slider. This is a Lang S3 slider, made out of aluminum. Its smooth bearings give this slider excellent performance. You'll see what I mean in just a few moments. This part of the slider is called the slider cradle. This is where you'll be mounting your gimbal, and this is where all the magic and the movement happens. On the underside of the slider, you'll notice that there are multiple tripod ports. Next, let's prep our Jiwon Crane version 2 gimbal. First off, we are going to have to remove a screw adapter. Since most slider cradles use a 3/8" screw for mounting, we are going to remove this adapter that's in the bottom of your handle. Simply use a flathead screwdriver to remove the adapter. This is a 1/4 20" to 3/8" screw adapter. This is very useful when mounting onto tripods. Now we are ready to mount it onto the slider. Simply screw it onto the cradle of the slider. Make sure that it's also secured and tight. That way it doesn't jiggle around while you move back and forth. If you want to mount your slider onto a tripod, flip the slider over to access all of the tripod mounting ports. Then attach your tripod's quick release plate. Use a quarter or any other coin to help you tighten up the screw. Make sure it's good and tight. Next, prep your tripod. Make sure that tilting and panning is completely locked. It has to be as tight as possible, otherwise your slider might seesaw up and down. Then slide in the slider and lock it in place. Then grab your gimbal and mount it to the cradle of the slider. Let's start our shoot with incorporating a dolly in and turn. To obtain smooth panning shots, we need to familiarize ourselves with the joystick. Take a look at how I'm positioning my fingers on the joystick. I'm using a pinching type motion. This allows me to better control the joystick on both sides, left and right. And that's how I'm able to control the pan nice and slowly. This shot is pretty tricky since we are dollying in and turning at the same time. Just like anything, it takes practice. Notice how I position my hand on the slider cradle. I position it this way in order to help me out with consistency, and because I allow my hand to touch the sliding rails, it gives me more tension, so I'm able to get more accurate slides. Next on our shot list is the dolly in and tilt. I love performing these shots, especially when I want to show off a hallway. Here's how the shot looks like. Notice how I start off with the tilt up, and then I slowly tilt down. Using a similar method as my last shot, I'm using my 2 fingers to pinch the joystick in order to get a nice, slow, and consistent tilt. Also notice how I hold the gimbal. I put my thumb right under the pan motor. It makes it more comfortable and stable. Also, let's have a look at my stance. I'm using the lean in and lean out technique. By minimizing steps, you will not see any vibrations or inconsistencies in your footage. Our next shot is the slider and track. We are using a side-to-side sliding motion, however, we will be also tracking a subject. I strongly suggest that you turn on your grid lines in your camera so that way you can easily track a subject. Before getting started with the shot, I strongly suggest that you open the ZY Play app and change the panning parameters under the control rate. I set mine to 2. This is an extremely difficult pan, so this is a must. After changing the gimbal's pan parameters, you'll notice how much slower the pan is. Even if we press the joystick far to the right or far to the left, the gimbal will still pan at a very slow speed. This is exactly what you want. That way your consistency will stay the same. Since I changed the panning parameters, I'm able to hold and push the joystick any way I wish. I don't have to use 2 fingers here. Remember that changing parameters does take time, so make sure you change the parameters only when you know for a fact that you need to. As stated earlier, I'm using my hand to help me create friction on the slider. That way I can move at a much slower rate. Since our hands can be oily and greasy, it's important to wipe down your slider after using it. Use a lint-free cloth to wipe it down.
So that's how I use my gimbal on my slider. Again, using a slider like this one here with your gimbal will greatly improve your accuracy and stability of your shots. I'll leave a link for this slider in the description box below, so make sure you check it out. Don't forget to give this video a big like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel with notifications on. I can't wait to see what you create. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.